Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Dojo Live. Today is Thursday, September 23rd, 2021. This is the last show for this week, and it's definitely going to be an interesting show. We're excited to speak with our guest. I want to introduce my co hosts today. We have Mariel Navarro, who's joining us from Chihuahua, Mexico, and we have Carlos Ponce from Cuernavaca, Mexico, and our guest, who's joining us just outside of Boston. Vishal Sunak, who is the co-founder and CEO at LinkSquares. Welcome, everyone, to the show. Let's have some fun, shall we?
Yeah,
Please.
thank you.
Excellent. So, in our sort of teaser promo, we talked about how many people in the legal profession might feel a little left out when it comes to leveraging AI to create more predictable business models. So we made them a promise that they don't have to feel left out anymore. That today we're going to answer the question on how they can elevate their legal game by leveraging AI. So, but before we go into the topic and dig into that and learn what we can and share what we can with the audience, let's get to know you as our guest today. Vishal, if you could please introduce yourself, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This is a ton of fun. Yeah, Vishal Sunak, one of the founders of LinkSquares, currently the CEO. And we're really on the mission to elevate the status of the legal department through a suite of products that help in contract management. So we're a contract management platform. We have two products in market. They help to enable legal teams to work with data, which is not really a thing that has been a focus in years past. Have insights, collaborate better, support their business, help their business move forward faster. And company is about 150 people. We're mostly in Boston, although we're other places now too, which is really exciting. And a little bit about me. I have a beautiful 2-year-old little girl, and I've been married for, it'll be 4 years next Friday, which is really exciting. And love talking about startups, love talking about technology, and thanks for having me.
Pleasure to have you. Did you say 4 years or 40 years?
Four, just 4 years.
He looks really young for being married.
Yeah.
Let's have a whole nother conversation about what is it that you're eating.
Though, yeah.
That's a more interesting topic for sure.
Okay. Well, the Tom Brady diet, right? Everyone in New England,
exactly.
Right? It's no mushrooms and stuff like that.
So thanks for giving us a little bit insight into LinkSquares. I'm curious, what gave birth to the company? What was that moment sitting around saying, you know what, we need to do this, and here's why? What was that like? What was that moment?
Yeah, my co-founder and I and most of our management team, we all worked together at a tech company about 10 years ago. And that company got bought by a much bigger company. And through the acquisition process, as us as the target, the acquiring company came in and asked us what we had agreed to in all the customer contracts that we had. And I had a role in operations back then, so I got to touch a lot of different parts of the business. And what we began to figure out was we had thousands and thousands of agreements. They were all scanned PDFs. They were all locked images. We had negotiated them. There was really no tangible way to understand 50 pieces of standard data. What have you agreed to individually on each one? Because the volume is too large, third-party paper, redlining and negotiating. These are all customer contracts, right? So it was a real light bulb moment for my co-founder, Chris, and I, that we looked out into the market. It's not a new market. It's 20 years old. And the technologies that were in this market really focused on something that wouldn't solve the problem that we had. These contracts were already executed. A lot of the products in market focus on pre-signature actions, right? And it was an awesome kind of opportunity that we felt like we weren't alone. Do other companies not know what's inside their contracts and don't have access to it? And then we went on this big discovery mission that ended up creating this awesome company, LinkSquares, an amazing product that we call Analyze, which can read contracts with algorithms really accurately, really quickly. And now we extract almost 100 pieces of data out of the box in just a few minutes. So that's where LinkSquares came from. It was a real problem that we experienced, and some of the best companies in the world were started that way too. And that's our story as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that with us, and thanks for being with us. So let's dig right in and see what we can learn here. Carlos, please introduce the topic today.
Absolutely. Thank you, Tulio. And of course, thanks, Vishal, for joining us today. So, legal departments want the same predictive abilities as their counterparts, right? In marketing and sales. But are they ready to harness AI? This is the question that we're going to be answering today. And the topic, as chosen by our guest, is AI and contracts, elevating the legal team. So, the first question that I have for you, Vishal, is why did you choose this particular topic for today's conversation, and why did you feel it might be relevant for today's day and age? Let's start there, please. Thank you.
I think we're at a real inflection point in the viewpoints of in-house legal teams. And they are now looking around at the executive table and saying, I need data to make decisions. I want to have a snappy looking dashboard and presentation I can put together that I can show that I'm on top of my game, but I'm also knowing all the ways I can help the business be more efficient on how we spend money, or create additional opportunities for us to make money, right? And this idea, this topic that we're talking about today is really the mission that's powering us as a company, right? So it's really relevant for me to talk about it every day, which I do. We're just at an amazing intersection of the ease in which machine learning technologies can be deployed and used in really tangible, like, business use cases, right? AI is such a buzzword. Some people think it's too buzzwordy. What is a practical application of AI? And we found that practical application, right? If I can create 100 pieces of metadata about things you've agreed to in contracts, like what's the effective date, who are the parties, does it automatically renew, does it terminate for convenience, what's the limitation of liability, what's the assignment, it goes on and on and on. If we could create that experience using what we know about technology, then it is a reality that legal teams can harness the power of AIs just like their peers.
This is very, very interesting. I'm listening and I'm thinking to myself, okay, whenever we do a deal, we have a master services agreement, and there's always some nuance, little tweak and tune for every client. It's no one really actually executes exactly the standard. Some do, but there's always some tweak and tune. And then sales has to hand off to a customer success team the information, and it's always this training process of, like, okay, here's a little nuance that was negotiated, because there's no way to extrapolate that information. Like you said, it's in a PDF. So would this allow, for example, the ability to say, okay, here's the standard terms, for example, and highlight the differences so that multiple team members or people who come into a new agreement or a new account over time can quickly get up to speed on the nuances? Is that part of the dashboard capabilities that you're talking about? Just curious about how that comes together in a real life example.
Yeah, projects about what's standard and not standard come up all the time. It comes up if you want to raise capital from investors. It comes up if you're trying to sell a company. It comes up even if you're on the other side and you're trying to buy a company, right? People are looking for material changes in your standard contracts versus things you agreed to that may be one-off, they may be risky, right? What is one of the more fascinating things that happens in real life is a 10, 15, 20-year-old business may have gone through 3 or 4 or 5 general counsels, right? The founding general counsel of a massive tech company that's now public is maybe not there anymore. And so contracts may still be active and been executed and negotiated by someone else. How do you even enable a new hire who needs visibility into things that the company has already agreed to? But congratulations, on day one, it is now all your responsibility to know these answers, and it's really impossible to do that.
Vishal, I'd like to ask you about the the non-technology side of the whole operation at LinkSquares. And I'm assuming that I know that we're talking about AI and the role that AI has in on LinkSquares, but I am assuming as a layman, I am assuming that there's a non-technology component to it when as it pertains to gathering the data. Like how do you deal with this? Do you work with attorneys, with legal departments to give you for the input of the data to be processed? How does this part work so I can better understand it? And others who might not be as technology savvy as my fellow teammates here. So, how does this work so I can understand better?
Sure. Yeah, great question. To train an algorithm is to first teach it how to grow up mentally and become smart, right? I always say that algorithms start off as like newborn babies, right? But you actually need to turn them into like an advanced PhD that knows how to subject matter expertise and provide that, right? So the journey from turning from a newborn baby into a PhD who's a subject matter expert is the process of training, right? So you use source data to enable iterative development of an algorithm, right? Every time, I'm sure you've used those reCAPTCHA or CAPTCHA type of technologies where they ask you to identify stop signs. Okay, here's 9 pictures, identify which one is a stop sign. And you are getting gatewayed into whatever you're trying to do, submit a form, create an account, reset your password. I just reset my Spotify password today, and I needed to pick out a bunch of stop signs. But really, who is the beneficiary of that? They're also getting labeled data, right? Maybe 3 people or 10 people or 1,000 people are shown the same 9 images, and with good correlation, everyone picked the 3 stop signs. And so now the behind the scenes, an algorithm could now be created to essentially detect stop signs, right? Because you now have enough people to confirm that if an algorithm made the same prediction, you would know that the truth exists, right? And so that's the whole process of development, right? You create a training set, you create a set where you know all the answers in advance. And then you compare when the algorithm is performing against answers that you know, right? That's how the layman's world of machine learning, works, right? And we've chose to use algorithms that need large amounts of samples, hundreds of thousands of samples to gain the best accuracies. And so it's taken years. It's taken millions and millions of dollars. It's taken years. It's taken PhDs and Juris Doctorates, and we turned a whole bunch of Juris Doctorates brains into algorithms, and that's been kind of the layman's journey through labeling data, through knowing that the truth data exists. But I think the hardest, most complicated thing is like LinkSquares has now extracted 50 million pieces of data. How do we know that it's accurate? Well, we can't go back and check 50 million pieces of data. We might as well hire a team in another country, labor arbitrage to check it, then we don't need the algorithms, right? The only really way for us to know is that the algorithms make a binary determination. I see the effective date in a contract. I know it's there. I don't see the effective date in the contract, and I'm also confident that it's not. And the way that we look at accuracy is through inconclusivity, where the algorithm can't decide. And that's the only true way, unless you're going to go spot check 50 million pieces of data. That's how we've built our technology, is to make binary outcomes. So that's a little bit of the science behind it. I apologize. I'm a 2-degree classically trained engineer, electrical and computer engineer. So I like the stuff, but I'll keep it high level.
Oh, of course. That's why I'm going to pass it on to Mariel to make sense out of it.
We brought a genius with us on Fish
Oh,
Show.
thank God!
Of course,
we got you covered.
Hello.
Yeah.
And just a simple engineer out here trying to survive. Vishal, going into that side of things, would you say that helping the AI learn is one of the biggest challenges that you have in regards of integrating AI into the legal field, or are there any other technological challenges that you might think are?
Yeah, totally. We contemplated this a lot in the early days. It's like, where's the intersection between when a machine made a decision for you, and do you know the decision the machine made on your behalf? And are you comfortable with the decision through evidence that the machine made the right decision, right? And so we've always studied the intersection between a human and a machine, and that really translates into all this work we've done for years. That you're going to laugh, all the work that we've done for years and years and years, and millions of dollars in PhDs, and inventing ways to read long passages of text with algorithms. This is really hard to do. It just bubbles down into a 30 by 30 pixel. We put a green light bulb icon that says we have high confidence. It's like, how do you synthesize something that is so hard to think about, algorithms and reading it and tokenized values and probabilities? Like, it reminds me a lot of Silicon Valley, right? The show Silicon Valley with the Pied Piper UI. It had all these buttons and switches and levers and input boxes.
Pied Piper, I love that show.
It's like no one could understand what this thing was for, right? You know, the middle algorithm, what was it for? We thought about that also. It's like all this work just manifests into like, here's the effective date, here's an icon that tells you that we're highly confident in it. And if you disagree, you can always override it too. But like, we also track the rate in which that happens, which is really low, right? And obviously we've grown the company massively now, more than 400 customers. And so that's how we've taken the data journey, really. It manifests down into a 30 by 30 pixel with an icon color. And like, why is that the case? Well, you know, general counsels, they're not NLP PhDs, right? They don't want to see precision in recall values and probabilities. They just want to know whether it's right or wrong. And it's also knowing your buyer, right? If you find very technical lawyers, are usually like patent attorneys, right? If you have like an engineering background, you become like a patent attorney. I guess that's a path. I personally chose I didn't want to become a patent attorney, so I didn't go to law school, but that's definitely a path that I've seen. It's like understanding your buyer, right? Understanding the ability for them to understand how the algorithm is performing and what decision could have been made on their behalf. It's a really fascinating topic.
Yeah. Your Honor, the machine showed a green light, Your Honor, so it's accurate. It was green.
Green means go. That's right.
Continuing on to that path, do you think that might become a problem, like the lack of human ownership and accountability on the decisions made? Like, let's say that for some reason a lawyer is working with this AI software, and then there's a decision made based on the outcome of the software, and then everything turns out like not very good. What would be the situation? Like, a person might be entitled to say, okay, that was not my decision, that was probably a bug on the software, or was it my decision?
Oh, of course. Yeah. I think of the decisions that LinkSquares made are not like life and death, even though they could have, you know, massive business consequences. Like, let's take an example, like a contract has automatic renewal, and you don't want to renew this contract, and you were running under an assumption that this contract didn't have automatic renewal, right? And then you end up figuring out that the contract had automatic renewal and our system failed to detect it. Now you've renewed $1 million contract that you're now stuck, you're on the hook for, right? And the things that we've always looked at is examining algorithm drift over time, right? As we continue to pick up more and more documents that it's reading, is it still doing its basic functionality, which is to make binary determinations, right? Tracking when the algorithm suffers to do it, and also setting very high thresholds on both sides, right? When the thresholds are set very high, the answers clusters to the outer extremes, right? Something is present and that signal is very, very strong. Or something is not present and that signal is very, very strong. And leaning on the side of transparency with a customer, it's like, I'd rather tell you that I don't know than tell you something that's wrong, right? And that's one of the fail-safes that we have, is that we err on saying, I don't know and I don't want to make a determination, but only acting with the highest confidence and obviously measuring and monitoring it all the time. You're spot on. It's a thing that could keep people up at night. It's like these algorithms are just making determinations all the time, every minute of every day. are they working correctly? That's why I have great data science team and PhDs that observe all this stuff in real time, right? But yeah, it's a big topic. And it's how we build trust with our customers, right? You can lose trust like that quickly, right? We don't get the answer right, or in the worst case, we made the wrong determination, right? Something that we thought of on in the early founding days of the company is like, how do we make sure that situation that you talked about doesn't happen, right? And I think we're doing a pretty good job.
It's good to hear. Going into that a little bit more, speaking of the QA side, like quality assurance of the software, like, are there any ethical implications? Like, where's your data coming from? Like, is there any sort of issues around that? Like, how do you generate the data that you use to feed the AI and make you work?
Yeah, I think like AI and ethics, especially in other scenarios and even other like legal scenarios, and even things like credit applications that happen, that the AI is biased towards it. We haven't seen over biasing on answers, which I think is a hot topic when it relates to ethics, right? The information that we seek is what's been written, right? It's the sentences that have already been agreed to and signed. We are adding a data extraction layer on top of sentences that are already been written, right? But I think as AI becomes more ubiquitous in the legal function and it's working with things like litigation or discrimination cases, like what is the bias of your algorithm when it has to make a decision or a classification, right? Like I think in classification and recommendation problems, you recommend that Marielle is a good candidate to get a credit card, right? Or you recommend that I'm not. And then what bias was put into algorithms in that sense? We've been doing this now this will be 6 years in November, and thinking through when and how we draw the line on making a next level of inference, right? And this is also parallels, like, are you taking jobs away because algorithms are doing what work that humans used to do too, right? And it's like, well, we're not here to take anyone's job away. We're helping enable people to do more high value work. And the algorithms, the little robot paralegal that can work behind you, is here to enable you to be more efficient, right? But I think it's a really interesting topic around ethics. And we're only in like the first few minutes of a very long saga on ethics generally with AI.
Thank you. I think Carlos has a question.
Yes, I was on mute as usual. I was on mute, so bear with me. I'm known for that, Vishal. I'm always on mute when I start speaking. Anyway, so Vishal, we're approaching the final segment of today's conversation, and of course, I wouldn't want to end it without asking you specifically about the company culture. The reason being is because we might have people out there who might want to come work for you at some point. If they do, what would you say to these people to elicit the idea that, LinkSquares is a great company to work for? So what is important for you in terms of the company culture that makes it an ideal place or a great place to work?
Yeah. Culture is really what fuels employees to want to come to work, want to do a great job, right? And so I usually say the same thing, and I've said the same thing for years, which is if you came and you joined the company for 6 months, 12 months, 10 years, you never left, you were a first employee and you never left ever, what are you going to take away when you go and look back at your time, right? And really, how do you find a place that you spent your time well, right? You only have so much time in your career journey. It's a long career journey. It can be a 30, 40-year career journey, right? But the time you spend with us, what did you do, right? Well, you worked with amazing people alongside you who cared as much about winning and doing a great job as you did, which is really everything, right? Like the no idiots rule inside of a company. Like, would you go get a beer with someone? Like, would you want to become friends with them? And often a lot of our employees are in each other's weddings and, being part of their wedding parties. And it's just so refreshing to know that we still have a very high bar for the type of person we want, regardless of what you're doing, right? Were you able to do something that has never been done before? And not every industry is like that, right? It would be like being on the founding team of Tesla and Elon Musk showing up and being like, so we're going to make cars drive themselves. It's going to be pretty awesome. Who's with me? It's going to be awesome. Come on, let's go do this, right? And in a lot of ways, we're doing the same thing. We're enabling people to really stretch out creatively through innovation, especially on the tech side, to really build things that have never been built before, right? And when we dream something up, it's the first time that it's ever been dreamed up ever, right? Which is so incredibly rewarding. And that's a big part of it. I'd say the same thing around account management and customer success, right? You're going to get to work with the world's biggest brands like Fitbit and Twilio and VMware and Igloo coolers and just like really amazing companies that you probably interact with or have interacted with many times in your life. But the mission remains the same, is can we make good on our promises, right? And can we all hold ourselves accountable to put our customers first, right? Put our employees first. Can we go out and do this together? And it's definitely working. So I tell you that if you're looking for something fun and interesting and new and exciting, whether you're in sales, selling basically like a frontier product into an older industry, you're on the tip of the spear of innovation and renaissance is going on. And then on the tech side, it's massively amazing, right? Most people who work in engineering, they're builders, right? They're creative minds. They want to keep doing something new and tinker. I'm very much like that, right? Given I ended up studying engineering in college and had a career in engineering for 10 years before I came and did this full time. You're gonna have a lot of fun too. We're a fun company, and that's a big part of the culture too. So, but culture is really everything. It's our own personal whys, right? Like, why do I want to do this? Well, I'm having a great time. I work with great people. We're doing really fun and interesting, challenging work where it's going really well. I get paid really well. I get paid fairly. I'm having a blast. I see opportunities to grow here. That's it. I mean, I think those are the things that really matter.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. And probably one of the only companies where you could say the machine made me do it.
The robot paralegal did it.
Robot paralegal did it. No, all joking aside, congratulations. I mean, we've heard it's challenging sometimes for folks to go into the legal profession because everybody wants to get into tech and everybody wants to be in this space. But now there's an opportunity to leverage technology and AI in the legal space to elevate the team's game in the space. So congratulations for doing that and for creating an awesome culture. It sounds like a fun place to work, challenging place to work. Thanks for being with us. We're out of time, but before we wrap up, we have one final question. Any words of wisdom you have in terms of what you've learned building a disruptive technologies like this? How about yourself?
Yeah, don't give up. Don't give up. Anything that's really hard and worth doing is going to take your own personal perseverance to make it happen, right? And there are plenty of times on the journey where it just felt like everything was so hard, not enough resources, too many things to do, too many hours being worked. But I often find that if you don't give up and you can push through, you can always create a better future, right? By not giving up. If you don't give in to giving up, then everything is possible.
Awesome. Great words of wisdom. Thanks for being with us. Stay with us as we go off the air. Come back on Monday for the recap show. We will recap 3 shows on Monday. We had 3 shows this week. And what do we got coming up next week, Carlos?
Sure. We have a full week ahead, Julio. Tuesday, Tabella with its principal, with CEO, actually Juan Acosta. And then we got 10 Bound on Wednesday with David Dulani. And finally on Thursday, we're going to be speaking with Duda, DUDA.co, with its founder, Itai Sadan. So we have a full week ahead. I don't know if this, do we have a Wednesday morning one?
Yeah, we do. We actually have 4 shows next week.
Oh.
We have Properties on Wednesday morning at 10 a.m.
Oh,
so
there you have it. Yeah,
4 shows.
4 shows.
It'll be a full week. All right,
Absolutely.
everyone, stay safe, and don't forget to tune in for the recap show. 10 minutes, we'll recap all the shows in 10 minutes. Don't miss it. 12
Don't
o'clock
miss.
Pacific on Monday.